huge night in the SEC, really huge Tuesday night in college basketball. Let's start with the new number one team in the country. That's the Auburn Tigers. They have been an absolute wagon all year. They already have 7 Quad 1 wins, one of 2 teams around the country, along with Oregon, that has more than 5 Quad 1 victories, and both the Tigers and the Ducks have 7. Auburn, number 1 in the country, and it's a top 15 tilt tonight on the Plains against Mississippi State. 7.5-point spread in favor of the Tigers. Total stands at 149.5, so dropping ever so slightly. Of course, big news tonight for Auburn, not just being the new number 1 team in the nation, but more than likely playing without Johni Broome, who is the favorite to win the Wooden Award as National Player of the Year, injured his ankle over the weekend. Not expected to be overly severe, but his status unclear for tonight. 7.5-point spread, Joe, against the Bulldogs from Stark Vegas. How do you see it playing out?
Well, it's unfortunate, too, because Bruce Pearl said it's significant, too. They did have an MRI, and, a significant high ankle sprain like that, Ben, is there's no timetable here. It could be a while, but they don't have time to cry here because they're going to have their hands full with Mississippi State here tonight, who, by the way, has only lost 2 games so far this year. They're going to have to figure some things out, unfortunately, offensively without him in that lineup. So I do think it's going to be interesting. Can they be as efficient offensively while he is out? And boy, are they going to get tested defensively. They're going to be hounded here tonight. I think this is a big, big test to see whether or not Auburn is truly worthy of that number 1 spot. Because if they can figure it out against this Mississippi State team and cover, not only win, but cover this one, Ben, oh boy.
Yeah.
Auburn has to be taken seriously here for a national championship.
Yeah, absolutely so, Joe. And if they can do that with the depth behind Johni Broome, that would be something. But obviously, Mississippi State top 15 team, Chris Jans, has a great squad for the Bulldogs this year. Elsewhere in SEC play, yet another top 25 tilt. Number 4, Alabama, playing host to number 21, Ole Miss tonight. Double-digit spread in favor of Nate Oates' Crimson Tide, and a total at 163.5. What's the play tonight for this top 25 matchup in Tuscaloosa?
Well, it's going to be interesting, right? If you are Chris Beard, you're going to have to figure out a way to slow down this Alabama team, aren't you, here? And they're going to have to I wouldn't want to get into a shootout with Alabama, Ben, right? So you're going to have to, Chris Beard, going to have to take out a page in his old Texas Tech days there and figure it out defensively and make them earn everything. It feels like a big number. Alabama is capable of getting this, of covering this number, but I don't know. I think Ole Miss could very well give them a tough time here and could keep it within this. Look at that total, too, at 162.5.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a high total working its way up. Now live at 163.5. Not surprising for the type and style of basketball that we see out of the Crimson Tide, of course, under Nate Oates. But that's probably Ole Miss's way of keeping this game under that total and within striking distance, 11.5-point spread. Joe, again, it is no surprise to see many top 25 matchups within the SEC. It is the best conference in college basketball this year, without a shadow of a doubt. 4 of the top 6 teams in the AP poll, 6 of the top 10, 7 of the top 15. That is how good this conference is, up and down. So we now go to Kentucky and Texas A&M. I said 6 of the top 10, 6 of the top 11 as we include the Aggies. 6.5-point spread in favor of Mark Pope's Cats tonight inside Rupp Arena. Total 158.5. How do you break down the SEC showdown tonight in Lexington?
This is a rough stretch here for the Aggies, isn't it? What is this, their 3rd straight against a top 15 or 16 in the country? They split the first 2. They did beat Oklahoma by a couple in what was a crazy slugfest. And then, of course, Alabama on Saturday. And they didn't have Wade Taylor for that one. It's to be determined. But I don't know if we've heard on whether or not he's going to be available for this one. But it feels like, yes, Kentucky at home. Oh, they're going to have their hands full. Another great shooting night for Kentucky there, which is what allowed them to be able to win their last game. It feels like an over, Ben. If you like Kentucky, you got to like the over in this one.
Yeah, and for Wade Taylor, Joe, that senior point guard that really leads the way for Buzz Williams, ruled out tonight in Lexington against the Cats. Listen, Texas A&M has been great this year, 11th in the country. Yes, they did suffer a loss on the road, or at home, against the Crimson Tide on Saturday in a high-scoring game, 94-88. But we know the staples of what Buzz Williams teams do well. They defend the crap out of the basketball. 13th most efficient defense in the country. That is A&M, and they are going to crash the glass on both sides. Best offensive rebounding team in the country. That is A&M. But Kentucky can shoot from everywhere. It's what Mark Pope teams do very, very well. That total, 158 and a hook. Joe Ranieri, as always, it is great to be on the early line with you. John Rothstein joins us next, so we bid you adieu, my friend. Go get some relaxation. I'm sure you got a tea time coming up in like an hour anyway.
It's a good thing you reminded me of that, Ben. We'll see you again on Friday.
Don't miss the first tee, my friend. John Rothstein joins us next. You want to know why college basketball is a glorious thing? Just look at the Tuesday night slate that we have before us on this Tuesday, January 14th. We've got top 25 matchups that go across the entire docket on the schedule tonight in every power conference you can think of. And how better to rein in this glorious Tuesday in college hoops than with John Rothstein, live right here on this Tuesday morning on the early line on SportsGrid. Already has the tie on. This man means business. Joining us on behalf of the FanDuel Sportsbook and, of course, doing great work with CBS Sports. John, as always, we appreciate the time. Thanks for being here.
Ben, always great to be with you. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday to you, and what a happy Tuesday it is in the sport of college basketball. John, when you have 6 teams that rank in the AP top 11, 7 in the top 15, 8 in the top 25 overall, that being the SEC, you are basically going to have multiple top 25 tilts each and every night of conference play. And that includes the new number 1 team in the country, number 1 Auburn, at home tonight in a top 15 tilt against 15th ranked Mississippi State. New territory for the Tigers, John, as the top team in the AP top 25. What is the key for Auburn remaining number 1 throughout this week, starting tonight against the Bulldogs?
Well, Auburn has to find a way to progress without Johni Broome, who is obviously out due to an ankle injury. Auburn now, again, possessing the depth needed to replace him with other players that are capable of filling a spot. You're never going to replace Johni Broome with one man, but the players who will see their usage increase, Chaney Johnson, Dylan Cardwell, they need to be right now big-time producers for Auburn to beat a team like Mississippi State, who again gave up 95 points at home to Kentucky on Saturday night, which is unfathomable for a Chris Jans coach team.
John, you shared that when Auburn returned home this weekend, they had an MRI done on Johni Broome's ankle that he suffered a sprain in the matchup against South Carolina. Non-surgical ankle sprain is what you mentioned. What is the status of Johni Broome for the remainder of the SEC slate?
Well, again, we don't have a set timetable yet for Johni Broome's return, but a comparable injury, I think, Ben, at this juncture could be probably similar to what UConn is dealing with for Liam McNeely. So usually that's a couple of weeks. So if you told me that Johni Broome returned at sometime in late January, early February, I think that's a safe estimate. Now, things are going to change over the next 2 or 3 weeks in a lot of different factors in college basketball. Without Johni Broome playing for the next few weeks, that could open the door for other players, Marquette's Cam Jones, Duke's Cooper Flagg, who had 42, 7 assists, and 6 rebounds Saturday against Notre Dame, to potentially leap ahead of him in the National Player of the Year race. Now, another thing to keep in mind, Auburn right now is firmly entrenched as a projected number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, and the NCAA tournament selection committee will take into account any games that the Tigers do drop without Johni Broome. But there is a chance in the rugged SEC that Auburn could take some losses. And Ben, 8 weeks from Sunday will be Selection Sunday. And I think it's always important in the sport of college basketball to look at things from 30,000 feet. Remember this, every time Auburn plays, Auburn is playing to be the number 1 seed in the South region. Why is that so important? That means first and second round games in Lexington, and more importantly, it would mean Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games in Atlanta, which has been a second home to Auburn in recruiting, in neutral site games. That is what the Tigers are playing for. It's harder to get there without the National Player of the Year favorite, Johni Broome, in the lineup. But Ben, you know as well as I do, this is only January.
It is only January, but the impact of what this injury could be throughout the entirety of college basketball. John, as we shared last week when we were together, Auburn's Johni Broome was the minus money, odds-on favorite to win the Wooden Award after a 42-point performance, the ACC freshman record, and the injury to Broome. Cooper Flagg, now that minus money favorite on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Back to tonight's action. Top 25 tilt, as they often feel like they all are in the SEC in Tuscaloosa. 4th-ranked Alabama, 21st-ranked Ole Miss, and a double-digit spread in favor of the Crimson Tide. What is the matchup to look out for tonight in Tuscaloosa?
Well, you have to look at the depth of Alabama against the physicality and the experience of Ole Miss. You know, I talked to Chris Beard yesterday, and he told me that Alabama has incredible depth, obviously considerably deeper than the team a year ago that went to the Final Four for the first time in program history. But the constant for this team is Mark Sears. And after a slow start to the season, Mark Sears has regained his All-American caliber form. And Alabama, Ben, has been a virtual wrecking machine to start SEC play, averaging over 96 points per game thus far in conference play, entering tonight's game in Tuscaloosa against the 14-2 Rebels.
It's why you see that total at 163 and a hook. John, as we have shared, 6 of the AP top 11 from the SEC, including both Kentucky and Texas A&M. Tonight in Lexington, an SEC showdown. What do you think the ceiling is for both of these clubs that will square off tonight inside Rupp Arena?
Well, Texas A&M showed me a lot last week playing without Wade Taylor IV, their All-American guard, who, according to the SEC injury report, is going to miss tonight's game at Rupp Arena as well. SEC play has been a juggernaut so far. Texas A&M went on the road and beat Oklahoma and Norman without Wade Taylor IV. Texas A&M took Alabama to the brink without Wade Taylor IV. I think when healthy, Texas A&M is a Final Four dark horse, and I think you have to look at Kentucky right now, along with Michigan, as being arguably the most aesthetically pleasing teams in the sport. I have the utmost respect for Chris Jans as a coach. I have never seen a team play better offensively against Chris Jans' teams since he was at Mississippi State than what Kentucky did on Saturday night in Starkville, putting up 95, shooting better from 50 from the field and 50% from three. It was a clinic offensively by Mark Pope, who again and again continues to reiterate why he's such a perfect fit for that job. Ben, it's hard to believe 29 years ago, Mark Pope was obviously the captain on the greatest Kentucky team and probably the best team I've ever seen in my lifetime, the 96 team led by Rick Pitino, who will lead St. John's tonight against Georgetown. What a Tuesday, but this is only January.
It is only January. More of the early line next. Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid, we get you set for a huge Tuesday night all around college basketball. A focus on the SEC because of how many top 25 ranked tilts we have on a nightly basis in that conference. But now we go elsewhere around the sport. You heard John mention Cooper Flagg, 42-point performance on Saturday in a Duke win against Notre Dame. The ACC freshman scoring record for the guy that's going to go first overall this upcoming June in the NBA draft. We expected Cooper Flagg to be this good. He has lived up to that expectation so far. And as we shared, because of the injury to Auburn's Johni Broome, the ankle sprain that will probably sideline him for multiple weeks, the missing of availability, and the time that Cooper Flagg will have on the floor with those historic performances thus far, Cooper Flagg now a minus 350 favorite to win the Wooden Award. He was the preseason favorite to win this award as well. And Duke is rolling. Perfect in the ACC. 6-0. They've been a double-digit favorite in 5 of those 6 games as they will be tonight against Miami. A Miami team that just a couple of years ago made it to the Final Four. A year prior to that, they made it to the Elite Eight. It has been a disastrous season for the Canes, who are winless, 0-5 in the ACC after a 3-0 start. Miami has dropped 12 of its last 13 games, of course, not all that long ago. Coach L, as he is known in Coral Gables and really all around college basketball, Jim Larinaga, retiring. So Miami is in a tailspin. Thus, the 22.5-point spread tonight inside Cameron Indoor. More SEC action. Florida, a top 5 team, one of those 4 SEC team ranked in the top 6 of the AP poll. Intriguing one in Big East play. Marquette heads to DePaul. Chris Holtmann off to a great start in his first year in the Windy City. Double-digit spread. Might the Blue Demons be able to keep this game within the number? Home floor advantage, man. We know how important it can be in conference hoops. We saw that on Saturday. Indiana, who went to Carver Hawkeye in Iowa City on Saturday night against the Hawks, got their doors blown off. 85-60. IU at home, some impressive outings. IU on the road, lackluster to say the least. But the Hoosiers are at home, catching 3.5 tonight against Illinois. The Illini hoping to bounce back as well, dropping to 19th in the poll. But this Illinois team has been able to put up some really impressive offensive performances with one of the best freshmen in the sport, Kasparis Yakachonis, who should be out there tonight, at least at last check. More Big Ten action, Ohio State and Wisconsin. The Badgers now cracked the top 25 in that AP poll, laying 6.5 against the Buckeyes. Wisconsin has been playing really good hoops. I would lay 6.5 with the Badgers tonight. Arizona, unranked, but we know how good they can be in Tucson. First year in the Big 12, catching 5.5 against the Baylor team. Really been up in the air this year. 11-4, the mark already for Scott Drew's Bears. Plenty of great action elsewhere, not just with ranked teams in the fold. John mentioned how Rick Pitino and the Red Storm hosting Georgetown tonight. Keep an eye on the Hoyas, already playing much better basketball in the Big East in year 2 under Ed Cooley than they had in year 1, or really any of the Patrick Ewing era during his time there in D.C. Tonight, here in the greater New York City area, 8.5-point spread in favor of the Johnnies against Georgetown. Other intriguing Big East matchups early in the day. 6:30 p.m. Eastern time in Cincinnati. Villanova catching 2.5 against the Musketeers. 145 and a hook. Another disastrous start for year number 3 under Kyle Neptune on the main line. But Nova has figured something out, certainly here in Big East play. So much good college basketball tonight. Really, you could go up and down the docket and find a game that you can find some intrigue in. Big 12 battle, Texas Tech and Kansas State. The Wildcats struggling mightily this year with Jerome Tang in a year that was supposed to be promising. More Big 12 battles. BYU, 14.5-point favorite at home in Provo against Oklahoma State. Kevin Young in his first year there for BYU, a very stout offensive team. Plenty of great action around the country tonight. Again, another reminder of why you do not wait until March to watch college basketball. These kind of nights, each and every night, now with conference action fully underway in college hoops. That does it for today on the Early Line. We return tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, here on a Wednesday on TEL.